Hello, YouTube community. CDL trucking guy coming back at you with what I promised. We're going to start the CDL permit course today. This is going to be 12 to 14 sessions. I haven't timed them out yet, so I'm actually doing these at the moment. I'm submitting them, so I haven't done any ahead of time with work schedules. It hasn't permitted, but give you a little bit of introduction here. Again, I've been in the trucking business for about 30 years. I've taught these courses for several years within my company. I've had a lot of people go through the course and be successful at it. Just to recap again, the new federal motor carrier laws as of February 7th of 2022 requires anybody that wants to become a commercial driver has to mandatorily go through a driving school, or right now you do not have to get your license. So again, to recap, this is a good way to save money ahead of time. If you are going to go to a driving school, you can use this as a precursor to get your permit and go in there and negotiate just getting the practical experience, which is driving the truck. There's probably still going to want you to go through a few things of theirs, but with a $5,000 to $8,000 ticket to go to school for 6 weeks, this can save you some money. Or you can use this for a refresher for when you do go, and if you do take their permit, practical, and their knowledge test. This is called a knowledge test. You can be assured that your money's going to be well spent because you'll already have gone through all of this, and what you're going to do with them is going to be a refresher. So there's no way you can lose by going through this. Obviously, it's not costing anybody anything except for your time. So I'm just as guilty as everybody else sitting in the chair, for an hour, scrolling through YouTube, looking at silly stuff, or people putting a helmet on, running to the wall, or whatever it may be. So why not use something like this as some education? And even if you're not going to get your license, see what a driver has to go through, to get their license and what they have to do every day and the requirements. It's all good to know. There's nothing bad that can happen from this. So go through it, check it out. Please subscribe, like, and share. Hit the bell so you know when the next one comes out. So in the title, I'll label these as you go through, just in ascending numerical order, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And at the last one, I'll title it, this is the last course, so there's several sections to this. There's an introduction section. I think it's important. We could skip over it, but it's important for you to know what goes on and what they're asking for. And I'm in New York State. This is a book that you can pull it offline. They're commercial motor vehicle driving test booklets or knowledge booklets you can go through. You can get them online and do a PDF. Just click in your state and this commercial motor carrier or commercial driving book for the test. Or if you're going by a motor vehicle in your state, town, county, whatever it may be, you can stop and pick one up. They're free. That way you get a hard copy. It'd be much better to do that than print off the whole thing and save yourself some ink. There's probably about 190 pages of this thing. There's only a couple things that might be different in your state. I don't know what they are. They might toss a little bit something in. We're going to go through New York one. This is a commercial program. So the CDL license was initiated back around 89, 90-ish. Don't quote me on that, but that a long time ago. And prior to that, it was just a Class 1 license, which was regulated by the state. The commercial side of it is regulated by federal motor carrier, which is in all the states. So prior to the Class 1, it was called a chauffeur's license. So it goes way back, but the commercial program is in every state. It's followed by every state, the same guidelines. Like I said, there might be one or two little things in your state that they throw in there, and you'll definitely know it, if you go through your entire book again. But after you go through this, there's a few practice questions in each section. They're good, but at the end of this whole process, I'm going to give you a website that you can go to, and it has excellent practice tests. Everything you see in those practice tests, you're going to see on the permit test when you go to motor vehicle. You go through it and take it, then they'll give you the answers at the end of it. Do it right. I mean, if you cheat on it, you're only cheating yourself. So the whole idea is to challenge yourself so you understand what's going on. At the end of the day, this is for yours and everybody else around your safety, to make sure that you're following the rules and getting the right amount of rest and just doing things the right way. Every time you go out in a truck, you want to be safe. And the truck ahead of you, you want that to be safe, because you never know if it's going to be your family driving next to them. That's the way I always practice my whole life. When I'm securing a load, I always put one extra strap on it just for extra safety, because you might have enough tie downs according to the law, but I don't think you can ever have enough. But you want to, if it's on a flatbed or a low boy hauling equipment, you want to make sure that if that thing turns upside down, that piece of equipment or that freight does not come off the trailer. That's the guideline, that I always use, and you should as well too, if you go that route. But so what this is going to cover is the first section. Is going to be the introduction, and that'll give you the scope and overview of your CDL guidelines, what you need. So during that, you'll learn the fundamentals of the driving in this whole book. You're going to learn pre-trip safety inspections. We also call them post-trip, so you do it after the driving is done as well in your day. Load securement. Even though you may be in a van trailer, there's still load securement ways inside of that, several different ways, and we'll go over them as well. Driver logs, which now everything's electronic logging. So we'll go over that as well too. I don't have an electronic log with me, but I'll show you what a logbook looks like, and basically the screen looks the same. There's certain ages of equipment that are exempt from electronic loggings. So it's like a 1999 year chassis or engine in a vehicle. So they are exempt. You still use paper logs with those. So we'll go over those. We'll talk about some shipping manifests, something you would see when you go to a shipper. We'll talk about scale checks, when you go over a safety check and weight scales and what the weight limits are. And, if the axles are able to be moved on that trailer, we'll talk about how you can move those to make the weight right. So even though you may be overweight, on your axles, because there are limits, we can move those and move the fifth wheel on a tractor to make the scale correct, so you don't get a ticket and everything is safe. Or safe. So, and we'll also talk about interfacing with shippers and receivers, how they treat you and how you treat them back. Basic, give them respect if you want respect back, and chances are they're not happy to see you, because when a truck pulls in, it means work for everybody. So we'll talk about that as well too. During this class, we'll describe, what a Class A and Class B license means. And again, the purpose and the scope of the CDL federal guidelines to be consistent in all states with this licensing program. But the testing is really the same in the entire state. So we'll have some general knowledge testing, some air brakes, and some combination vehicle testing as well too. But go ahead and jump on your state's website, and you can go ahead and get one of these books. You have it on hand, but again, there's going to be one or two little things that the state mandates different than what New York State would, but 99.9% of it is going to be identical to what your state has, because it's, like I said, it's federal across all the states. So we'll hit that, and we'll go ahead and get started with this, and that's where we're at. So let's jump right in the beginning. The introduction, we're going to go through section 1 first. So I'll go ahead and scroll through that. So this tells you what the section is going to cover. Commercial motor vehicles, CMVs, commercial driver's license, which we already talked about a little bit, the learner's permit and the classes, endorsements and restrictions. An endorsement may be something where you want to haul a tanker for hauling gas or hauling water or whatever, or milk or whatever of that sort. You need a special endorsement. which is a skill test that you have to take for knowledge endorsement. To have that, it's a letter, and it's added to the back of your license, as opposed to like a restriction. It may be on the back of your license as well too. Say you wear glasses, so you have an eyeglass restriction that comes with a code as well too. So that's just a brief overview. There's several endorsements you can get, and restrictions as well too. Commercial driver license and commercial learner permit requirements. Commercial driver license test. Additional requirements for bus drivers, which is separate because you're going to be hauling passengers. But it's going to be a commercial for transit, for just everyday people, or if it's going to be your students, you have to have a special classification called 19A that covers that as well too. Driver disqualifications, reasons why you'd be disqualified for driving. We talked about a little bit on that. A conviction for a felony and such like that. If you're in a motor vehicle, a commercial motor vehicle like a tractor trailer, and committed a felony while you're driving that tractor trailer, that would keep you exempt. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot else other than a medical condition. Seizures, if you're on medication for seizures and such, you can't get a medical card for that, and you can't get a medical card if you have dependency on syringe-based insulin as well too. So your doctors will know about that type of thing when you go in for your commercial motor vehicle physical. Other commercial privilege rules and international registration plan and international fuel tax agreement. That kind of stuff is not really going to pertain to anything that you're really going to need on the exam. But if you're going to wind up owning a truck one day, those will be important to you because you're going to need to pay for those things. So we can touch on that in another video as well too, when we talk about people wanting to be an owner operator and what that takes to become one. So 1.1, here we go. Starting this program out. You must have a commercial driver's license, CDL, or commercial learner permit to operate any of the following commercial motor vehicles. Any single vehicle with a gross vehicle weight rating, the GVWR, of 26,001 pounds or more. So just a little commentary on that. When you see a U-Haul truck, the biggest one that they have, they're 26,000 pounds. They're rated the limit. So anybody with a car license can drive one of those things. So that's the reason you'll see those the same. So they're generally a 24 or 26 foot box truck. And again, it stops right at 26,000 pounds to keep them exempt from having to have a CDL. A trailer with a gross vehicle weight rating of more than 10,000 pounds, if the gross combination weight rating, the GCWR, is 26,000 pounds, 26,001 pounds or more, the gross combination weight rating is the gross vehicle weight rating of the power unit plus the GVWR of each vehicle in combination. So if the vehicle's 26,001 pounds or more, and the trailer's rated at 10,000, doesn't even matter if you have 10,000 pounds on that trailer. If the registration says 10,001 pounds on it, and the vehicle's 26,001 pounds, you have to have a Class A, which is a combination vehicle license, so it's a Class A. A lot of people with smaller businesses and 1-ton pickups get in trouble because they wind up hauling a little gooseneck trailer commercially, hauling their equipment around. And they think because it's a pickup that they don't need Class A. Well, they're wrong. You get ticketed for being out of class and a lot of fines. So it's very important to understand what that means. When you see the single car trailers being pulled by pickups a lot, if you look at the registration on the plate on the side of it, that'll show you what it's rated for. You'll see it say 9,900 pounds. There's a reason for that. Again, it keeps it under the 10,000. So definitely be aware before you go out. If you have any questions, hey, call your local troopers barracks. They'll be happy to tell you what is correct before you get out there and get a ticket, or if you're rated over, then what the brakes will be rated for, and what you can stop with a pickup truck, and you get in trouble. So it can be very dangerous, and if you are okay through it, things will be okay. So sorry about that. Just got a text message from my daughter. um, so a vehicle designed to transport 15 or more passengers, excluding the driver, or a vehicle defined as a bus under Article 19A, Section 509A of the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law, which is going to be very similar to any of the other states as well, to the VTL. Any size vehicle that requires hazardous material placards or carrying material listed as a select agent or a toxin in 42 CFR Part 73, which, again, if you haven't followed me, you know, we talked about the green book, the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Book that you're going to get when you go to work anywheres. They'll give you that, and you'll sign. There's a sheet inside of it. You'll sign it and give it to them as a receipt that you received it. It has all these things in there. So the federal regulations through the Department of Homeland Security require background check and fingerprinting for the hazardous materials endorsement. So since 9/11, you have to have the full fingerprinting. Some states are a little bit different. I think in New York State it's 7 or 8 years that you have to have it. You have to redo your hazardous material, but I think you have to have a background check every 2 to 3 years. I haven't kept up on that piece of it because I let mine go because I never used it. And I think the first time, I did it the first time after 9/11. And then after that, I was like, I don't really want to do that because I'm not going to haul hazardous materials. You know, if you go to work for a company that requires that, they're generally going to pay for that for you because the background check and fingerprinting is usually a couple $100, $275, something of that sort. So it can be an expense, especially if you don't have that money in front of you. So again, we didn't talk about the 15 vehicle or 15 person vehicle transport. Basically, it's just a small bus. You know, I think that's sort. And then the 19A is what we talked about briefly. It's an endorsement you're going to have for hauling passengers. Let me see here. Exemptions. Drivers of the following vehicles that otherwise meet the definition of a commercial motor vehicle are exempt from the CDL requirement. So these are people that don't have to have that. We talked about that briefly too with firefighters and such earlier. A vehicle owned and controlled by a farmer has a gross vehicle weight rating of more than 26,000 pounds and is used to transport agricultural products, farm machinery, or farm products within 150 miles of the farm. So back in the day, you used to have a log and a map that showed where all of your farms are and where you're going to drive. And you needed to be on those routes. They had to be designated routes. And if you got pulled over, you better be on one of those routes or you're going to be ticketed for all kinds of things. So now they've waived that, and they just, you know, anything that's agricultural, that's within 150 miles of the farm, you could be on that road. You know, the same thing with licensing. You get farm plates, so they're exempt from HUD stickers like highway use tax and international fuel trade agreement stickers and such like that, which are very expensive. So, you know, if they had to pay for all that for every piece of equipment they have, we probably couldn't afford anything that we eat every day. It's bad enough as it is, but farmers do a lot for us. They have a lot of equipment, and it takes a lot of equipment, and a lot of times they're very underappreciated for what they do in this world, but we certainly need them. It's hard work. I grew up on a dairy farm milking cows, and you never had a problem going to sleep at night or gaining weight because you were always busy, but it was a very pure life. Anyways, off-road motorized construction equipment such as a motor scraper, a backhoe, graders, compactors, tractors, trenchers, bulldozers, and railroad track maintenance cranes are exempt when operated at a construction site not accessible to the public, or when operated on a public road open to unrestricted public travel for limited distances at less than normal highway speeds, provided the equipment is not used in the furtherance of a transportation purpose. Such vehicles, when occasionally driven on a public road to reach or leave a construction site, must be accompanied by an escort vehicle or in some other way separated from the public traffic. So what that means basically is that you can't drive one of those pieces of equipment 20 miles down the road because that's where the office is and your shop is, and you were doing a job 2 towns over. Now, if you need to, and it's a half an acre or a half a mile job of road frontage, and you need to get out on the road to go from one side of the job to the other side, that's perfectly fine. But that's called, you know, furthering that for distances that are non-related to the job itself. At that point, you're gonna, each construction company generally has a thing called a low boy. I'm sure many of you have seen those where they get loaded down and transport them back and forth. Fire and police vehicles engage in emergency operations in New York State or whatever state where you're at. So anybody's a volunteer firefighter, they're going to be obviously have some training within the fire department to operate that vehicle, but they're not going to be required to have a commercial driver's license for that. Military vehicles are a combination of vehicles operated by members of the armed forces. So the military has their own license. People come out and say, I have a military commercial license, and that's not the same. When you get out in the States, it should be. I don't agree with that, but it's that doesn't matter what I agree with or not. But our military folks, when they go through the training they do, it's probably more stringent than what happens on the outside. So generally, it's not tough for them to get their license. It's just one more step they have to do when they exit the military. They have to go through to get their license. It takes a little bit of time. So hopefully, if they had that training, they'll get waived on this new law in February. They have to go to school. I'm sure there'll be a lot of talk about that as well too, but hats off to our military. They deserve every opportunity they can, and I have to have any problems with it. So personal vehicles, including rental vehicles up to 26,000 pounds gross vehicle weight rating, when operated strictly and exclusively to transport personal possessions or family members for non-commercial purposes. So we're looking at recreational vehicles. So a motorhome, a diesel motorhome, maybe 40,000 pounds. If it's just for non-commercial purposes, do not need a CDL. And those are heavy vehicles. I don't necessarily agree with that, but they have air brakes as well too. And if you've never gone through any kind of training on what air brakes can do when they're hot and such like that, it can be dangerous. But at this given time, I think it's being discussed, but it still hasn't. That's as far as it's ever made it. It's been discussed, but nothing's ever come through on it. New York State CDL class descriptions. Class A, which is the top license that you can get. That's a combination of vehicles such as a tractor trailer or truck trailer. Gross combination weight ratings of GCWR of more than 26,000 pounds, provided the gross vehicle weight rating or GCWR of vehicles being towed is more than 10,000 pounds. That touches back on what we talked about with the car trailers, and anything's over 10,000 pounds. It doesn't mean that you weigh 10,000 pounds. It's whatever the registration says and what the side of the plate that's on the trailer, tongue, or if it's on the side of it, on the body, whatever that stamp on that plate is that it's rated for is what the officers look at. Doesn't matter what it weighs. You can have nothing on it. Endorsement codes, HMNPSTWX, commercial learning permit, limited to MNPSW. So we'll go through what those endorsement codes are just in the next section here or below it. Class B, which is a dump truck. Basically, I'll leave it at that. A dump truck, a bus, something of that sort. Something that doesn't have a combination, which is combination means more than one. So that would be two. Obviously, you can have two trailers behind you as well too for whole doubles. Some states out west, they do triples. So we'll Class B. So minimum wage is 21 in Class A and for Class B. Years ago, it was 18. So Class B is still 18, which means no interstate commerce. So, and there's no hazardous material as well too, or school bus operation. So interstate means you're going to drive from, so I'm in New York State. You couldn't go to Pennsylvania. You couldn't go, to New Jersey. So you'd have to stay interstate. It's called intra-state, I-N-T-R-A, state means you're staying interstate. Vehicle type is a single, such as a heavy single unit truck or a bus. GVWR of more than 26,000 pounds. Class B may tow vehicles with a GVWR of 10,000 pounds or less, or may tow a vehicle of more than 10,000 pounds if the gross combination weight rating is not more than 26,000 pounds. So you can use this again. So if you have a Class B in your dump truck, if you got a trailer like that car trailer, it's 9,900 pounds. You're good to tow that as a combination vehicle. But if it hits 10,001 pounds or 10,000 pounds, you have to have a combination license, which is a Class A. Endorsements, HMNPSWX. The commercial learning permit is limited to MNPSW. A Class C, you have to be 21 as well too. Same restrictions. 18, no interstate commerce, cannot transport hazardous materials or operate a school bus. So the vehicle type is a single, such as a single unit truck or bus. Gross vehicle weight rating of 26,000 pounds or less that transport 15 or more passengers, or transport passengers under Article 19A of the V&T law, or which is vehicle and traffic law, or carries hazardous materials. So there's your school bus. So anything bigger than a van. So you'll see a lot of 15 passenger vans. They would need that for that as well too. A Class C may tow vehicles with a gross vehicle weight rating of 10,000 pounds or less, or may tow a vehicle of more than 10,000 pounds, providing the gross combination weight rating is not more than 26,000 pounds. So the endorsement codes are there is HMNPSWX. All classes of licenses may be labeled or are available as enhanced, which does not change an individual's driving privileges. So enhanced, which means basically you can, now you have to have them to fly in a plane. You have an enhanced license. It used to be you had just an enhanced license would get you into Canada from here because we were boarding state of the country. But now you have to have your passport. So, but the enhanced worked for a long time. So now we go down to the endorsements, which are going to be the same really in all your states. F, farm class A vehicles. G, farm class B vehicles. H, hazardous materials. That's the same across the board. Metal coil, M. So back in the day when I got my license, we didn't have to have an endorsement for coils. So there's a certain way you have to tie down a coil, which is a big circle of steel, that are generally going to, let's just say the automakers, that they're going to stamp out for bodies or whatever like that. So yeah, in order, you have to take a little course on that and knowledge test on how you're going to secure a coil, which I think is important because they can really roll, and they've injured a lot of people and taken some lives. So the tank vehicles, which is an N, seems kind of funny that's not a T, but that's for the doubles and triples. So that's for hauling tankers for water, milk, gas, such like that. P for passenger, school bus, transit bus, for public transportation. RVs, GVWR over 26,000 pounds. S for a school bus. T for doubles, triples. W for a tow truck. And X for a tank and hazmat. So instead of having the N and the H, it just goes to an X for a tank and hazmat. Because generally, if somebody has a hazmat license, it's going to be hauling a tanker to a point. More hazardous material in a tanker there is in general commodities, but it goes both ways. But anyways, if you get your tank and hazmat, it covers you both sides. You can haul in a van trailer, haul in a flatbed, haul in a tank. So if you just get your hazardous material, the H, and don't have the tanker, you wouldn't be able to haul a hazmat. So you got the tank and hazmat for that. So let me scroll down here. License restrictions explain your driver limitations. License restriction codes are printed on the front of your license with a line under the expiration date, and E endorsement fields after the letter R. A description of any restrictions you have is printed on the back of your photo license document. So again, the letters are on the front, but the explanations are on the back with the letter as well too. A, Excel left of brake. A1, temporary visitor. A2, problem driver. A3, med cert exempt. We'll go through some of that. So there's some things where you don't have to be, you can be in a commercial motor vehicle, but you don't need a medical card. So that may be a firefighter, a farmer, somebody that's not driving out of state as well too, but we'll cover those later. A4 ignition interlock device, that's going to fall under somebody that's had generally a DUI, and they have to breathe into the interlock device in order to start the car, or they have to breathe in every 15 or 20 minutes while they're driving. I think that falls under using your hands, but what do you know? That's what it is. B is very common, corrective lenses, anybody wears glasses or contacts. C, mechanical aid. So if you're handicapped and you need mechanical aid to operate the vehicle, such as a handbrake, something of that sort, and that falls under, generally you're going to have a D with that as well too. It's a prosthetic device, again, for like a hand control or such. E, no manual transmission equipped vehicles. So this just came out several years ago. A lot of the trucks now have automatics in them. And if you take your road test with a truck with an automatic in it, you're going to get this restriction because you didn't prove on a practical test that you could shift gears in a truck. So that's going to limit you, to those trucks. So to be honest with you, probably 75% of the new trucks right now are all automatics, and companies are ordering them. They're a little more money, but they're more fuel efficient, and you generally don't have as many problems with them. But even our heavy haul guys are starting to use them a little bit, where it used to be always like an 18 speed. But we can also touch on that later. E1's automatic transmission. So if you get an E, you're probably gonna have an E1 on there as well too. F, outside mirrors. So if you got a vehicle that only has outside mirrors and an inside mirror. F1, hearing aid or full view mirror. G, daylight driving only. So somebody that may have night blindness, would be limited to something like that. H, limited to employment. Somebody has a restricted license or had it revoked, but they've gone to the courts and asked for an exemption so they can go to work. They wouldn't have that. And they better be going to and from work, if they get pulled over, because that's probably a big ticket or another revocation of the license. I, limited use automotive max 40 miles an hour. That may be a piece of farm equipment. I1, limited use MCY max 40 miles per hour. I2, limited use MCY max 30 miles an hour. I3, limited use MCY max 20 miles per hour. I4, three-wheel MCY. CDL, intrastate only. That may be an 18-year-old, doesn't have anything operate outside of it, or if somebody doesn't have a medical card. And we can look at those stars real quick. Class D only, which is a car license, is 1 star. Commercial class is 2 stars. Commercial learner permits 3. Motorcycle class only is 4. 5, the interlock device is not required in a motor vehicle owned by the licensee's employer if the vehicle is used in the course of licensed employment. The employer must consent to the use of the vehicle without the device. So if you got to drive a delivery, pickup, or something of that sort, and you have a restriction for an interlock device, it's only on your personal vehicle that's registered to you. That's what that means. L, no air brake equipped. M, no Class A passenger vehicle. N, no Class A or B passenger vehicle. N1, no vehicle designed for 15 or more adult passengers. N2, no vehicle designated for 8 or more adult passengers. O, no tractor, trailer, commercial vehicle. O1, no tractor, commercial motor vehicle, truck not over 26,000 GVWR. P, no passengers in commercial motor vehicle bus. P1, power brakes. Q, power steering. R, built up seat, pedals or shoes. This may be someone that has a disability with a leg or may have a prosthetic device as well too. And they have to have blocks on their brakes or on their gas pedals. Basically, it's illegal if you don't have this endorsement. You're not supposed to alter those at all without this endorsement. U, hand-operated brake. V, medical variants. V1, foot-operated parking brake. X, no cargo and commercial motor vehicle, tank vehicle. X1, full hand control. Y, shoulder harness use. So that may be somebody that has a medical issue and they can't get a harness over top them, or whatever the case may be, the size or whatever like that. They can get an exemption for that. It's about wearing a seatbelt. Z, no full air brake equipped commercial vehicle. Z1, a wheel spinner. 4, telescopic lens. 4 and 5, no limited access roads. So there's a lot of restrictions. There's a lot more than I remember being. There's a couple. I've got glasses myself, so I have that on mine. But there are a lot here. Let's scroll down and see what the next part is. Uh, 1.2, commercial driver's license, commercial learning permit classes, endorsements and restrictions. CDL and CLP classes, endorsements and restrictions are based on the type of commercial motor vehicle driven. The type of CMV is determined by the vehicle manufacturer's GVWR for single vehicles and GCWR, which is a combination vehicles, construction or use. Under New York State vehicle traffic laws, CMV's weight class restrictions or weight classifications are based on the greater of the following weights: the manufacturer's GVWR or the GCWR, registration weight or actual weight of the vehicle, and the load. The CLP CDL classes, endorsements, and restrictions therefore correspond to vehicle weight, construction, or use as shown in Figure 1.1, 1.2, and 1.3 on page 1-2. So this goes back to me saying whatever is on the side of that trailer is what they're going to go by. Now, if you happen to be over that weight, it's going to go by whatever that is. So you don't want to exceed what the weight rating is, because then you're going to look at tickets. The axles are rated for a certain amount. If you go over that, then you start looking at safety issues as well too. But if you're heavier than what the registration says, they're going to go by the heaviest part, just not what it says. So the highest amount is what they're going to get you on. So definitely want to stay within your weight, and you want to stay within the class of your license. 1.3, commercial driver's license and commercial learning permit requirements. The New York State licensing standards comply with federal laws related to commercial driver's licenses and commercial learning permits. To get a New York State CDL or CLP, you must meet the following standards and requirements. Legal presence requirement. U.S. citizens and lawful permanent residents must provide proof of citizenship and unrestricted lawful permanent residency at a DMV office. Once you've met this requirement in a DMV office, you will not be required to prove your legal status again. Applicants from a foreign jurisdiction must provide proof of your legal presence at a DMV office for every transaction. Please refer to Form ID for 44 CDL for a list of all the documents that you may submit as proof of U.S. citizenship, lawful permanent residency, or temporary legal presence. People have different views on that, so if you're a permanent resident or a citizen, you only have to show your proof once. If you're not, every time you show up, you have to show proof of that. So, a lot of things go back to the 9/11 and laws that happen after that for transportation safety. So, residency requirement. Again, this is for New York. You must be a resident of New York State to be issued a New York State CLP or CDL. One proof of residence is required to apply, transfer, renew, and amend your CLP CDL. So your license, if you have a Class 5 license, which is a driver's license, I think a 7 is a motorcycle license, whatever it is. So on your driving abstract, it'll show that you have that license. When you get your CDL and you get your permit, it's going to show that you surrendered that license and it's been amended to the new class. So it'll have a historical list of when it is. So when a company wants to pull up your driving record, it'll show, they'll know exactly how long you've had the license, because it's going to be on there as well too. So they share that information nationwide with anybody that does a driving abstract or reference check. Okay, a driver holding a CDL issued by another jurisdiction who moves to New York must apply for a CDL within 30 days after establishing residency. So That's pretty standard with any licensed class, really. So you can run for 30 days. If your residence is in New York State, you have to have your license based out here after 30 days of residency. If you live in Pennsylvania, but you drive in New York State almost every day, but you reside in PA, there's nowhere you keep your PA license. So it's wherever your address is. A new resident may apply to exchange a CDL issued by another jurisdiction for a New York State CDL reciprocity. However, to keep a hazardous material endorsement, you must pay the test fee taken, pass the hazmat written knowledge test, score of 80% is passing, and pass a background investigation. So that's the only thing that's changed. Again, after 9/11, all this stuff came out. So let me go down here again. Age requirement, Class A. You must be 21 years of age. Class B and C, you can be 18 years of age, but if you're under 21, you can drive a commercial vehicle for intrastate. Again, that's within your state lines only. Commerce within New York State, and cannot transport students in a school bus, and cannot transport hazardous materials. Language requirement, you must be able to read and speak English well enough to converse with other people, understand highway traffic signs and signals in the English language, answer questions from officials, make entries on reports and records, and take the skills test that's required for getting a CDL. Very important. You want to know that people can read the signs that's going up and down the road. Self-certification requirement. Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration, FMCSA, regulations require all New York State CLP and CDL holders to certify with the Department of Motor Vehicles to the type of commercial operation they perform or expect to perform. All CLP and CDL holders must certify to one of the 4 categories listed in 1-4 self-certification driving types prior to the issuance, amendment, or renewal of CLP or CDL. In addition, depending upon which driving type you self-certify to, you may have to have certain medical requirements that apply to you. An explanation of medical requirements can be found in the section 1.3.6. So when you apply for your permit, you're gonna have to check one of these boxes. So it's pretty self-explanatory. Non-accepted interstate NI, accepted interstate EI, non-accepted intrastate NA, and accepted intrastate EA. So the NI must be 21 or over, must not have a K or an A3 restriction. You can reference, in the video back up to that or in your book when you get that. CDL holders with a medical variance must have the V restriction. CDL holders with an H or an X, which is going to be the hazmat or the tanker hazmat endorsements, may select this driving type. Current U.S. DOT medical examiner certificate required. Okay, so this first one, the NI, is going to be probably 75 to 80% of the category. So if you want to get your license, you want to go drive truck and go anywhere in the United States, you need the NI. Okay, that's what you're going to be a normal regional driver or what. Even if you're only going to drive in the state, you never know. You don't want to have a restriction. If you wind up changing jobs, you don't have to go to motor vehicle to change this. Just check the NI. Basically, what this is saying is you don't have those 2 restrictions. You're over 21, and you get a medical certificate, physical. Okay. So accepted interstate, which means you can go, interstate, out of state. You must be 18 or over, must engage only in accepted operation, must have an A3 restriction, must not have a K or V restriction, must have an H or an X, which is a tanker hazmat, and a medical examiner certificate is not required. Okay. See sections 1.3.6 for accepted driver types. Non-accepted intrastate NA. It must be over 18. You must have a K restriction, must not have an A3 restriction. CDL holders with a medical variance must have the V restriction. CDL holders age 21 or over with an H or an X endorsement may select this driving type. current USDOT medical examiner certificate is required. Okay, so again, the one above you, that is the one that I'm gonna say that you should go for, because the NI is the one you wanna check. Accepted intrastate. Must be over 18, must be engaged only in accepted operation, must have the K and the A3 restrictions, must not have the V restriction, must not have an H or an X at tank and hazmat, and the medical examiner certificate is not required. So some of those are gonna fall under agricultural and fall under fire trucks and such like that, police vehicles. So cover the whole gamut, just do the one at the top on the left. Figure 1.4 certification of driving types. Interstate. Interstate commerce is when you drive a commercial motor vehicle from one state to another or a foreign country. That's intrastate. Between two places within New York State, but during the part of the trip, the commercial motor vehicle crossed into another state or a foreign country, or between two places within New York State, but the cargo is part of a trip that began or will end in another state or a foreign country. That's a big footnote right there. So, if you're a relay driver and somebody's coming from Ohio with a load and you work for maybe, one of the common carriers that delivers packages every night to our houses, it probably initiated in another state. And if it didn't stop in New York State, it's interstate cargo, so that's a good point. Intrastate is basically what we talked about earlier. Commerce is when you drive a commercial motor vehicle only within New York State and does not meet any of the descriptions above for interstate commerce. So a big piece right there is that last one, that last bullet point for interstate. Always want to know that. And it's going to be on the manifest, you'll know. The shipping documents that you're going to take from the other person or whatever it may be. It'll say where the origination was. Medical examination requirement. If you self-certify to a non-accepted NA or NI driving type, the federal government requires you have a medical examination in order to detect physical or mental conditions that may affect your ability to operate a motor vehicle safely. The examination requirements are found in the U.S. Department of Transportation's Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration Regulations under 49 CFR Part 391. This is that little green book I told you about as well too, but I'm sure you can find it online. It's a pretty thick book. It's probably got 300 pages on it. The USDOT medical exam covers 13 areas that directly relate to the ability to drive safely. You must pass a USDOT medical examination and receive a USDOT medical examiner certificate. When completing the MV-44 application to apply for, amend, or renew your New York State Commercial Learner's Permit or CDL, if you certify that you have a current valid medical examiner certificate, you must provide a copy of your certificate to the DMV in order to prove you meet this standard, if one's not already on file. We talked about this earlier, but anybody just jumping on here, there's only certain places, certain doctors, I should say, that are approved or have taken the Federal Motor Carrier test now to be approved to give the physical. And after they complete that, they have to file it with a state that you just had your physical in, and it goes in a national registry. So it's not going to be long where you won't have to carry a piece of paper with you. Some states say you don't have to, because when you get pulled over on your driver's license, the officer can search that to make sure that you're certified. Back in the day, you just carried a card with you, you looked at it, and that was it. If the date was correct and it was within not expired, you were good to go. If your medical examiner certificate indicates that it must be accompanied by a waiver exemption or skills performance evaluation certificate, a valid Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration variance of the same type indicated on your medical certificate must be on file with the DMV. The DMV will not accept copies of medical variance documents from the commercial drivers. Your CLP or CDL will not be issued, renewed, or amended if you do not present or have on file valid medical documentation. So when you go to renew your license, they'll see that it's been filed electronically through the state. It's always good to keep a card with you, but they have just as much access to see it as an officer does that it's been filed electronically. And if it's not filed in a proper time, they'll downgrade your license from a Class A to a Class D, which is a regular driver's license, until at that time that they've received it, and then they will upgrade it. But that's going to show, you could be driving a tractor trailer, and it's happened plenty of times. The driver gets pulled over, and the officer will say, your license has been downgraded, you don't have a car license, and they wind up getting a ticket for it. So it's really important. There's a website for each state that you send these to, even though the doctor is supposed to send this in for you. I always take a picture of mine on my phone and just email it right to that email address. You'll get a return receipt that you can't reply to saying they received it, and to allow 10 days for it to be active on under your license number. So the physical examination conducted just for bus drivers who are subject to Article 19A of the New York State Vehicle and Traffic Law does not meet the requirements of Part 391 of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Regulations, unless the federal medical standards, procedures, and forms were used and you received a medical examiner certificate. So sounds like there's two different physicals for that. Just have a commercial motor vehicle medical card done. It covers everything. So let me get this here. What is a medical examiner certificate? The USDOT medical examiner certificate is attached to the medical examination report, which is completed by a certified medical examiner from the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration's National Registry of Certified Medical Examiners. So this is what I talked about above, where the physician or PA, whoever they are, and nurse practitioner is taking their certification for the National Registry. It's quite a undertaking for those to take that. So not everybody in the doctor's office is going to have it. Generally, there's one or two in all the urgent cares as well too. So you're usually going to be covered even if you don't have a family doctor. All medical examiner certificates issued on or after May 21st, 2014 must be issued by a certified medical examiner and must contain the medical examiner's national registry number. So after 2014, the longest you can get a card for is 2 years. You have to recertify at the most 2 years, and then for any kind of medical conditions, they have different timelines they can give you a physical card for. It could be as low as 3 months for a blood pressure issue or whatever there may be. So you can get one from your doctor from 3 months to 2 years. Ideally, if you can get it for 2 years, you don't have to go back as much. If you get a blood pressure issue, you're probably gonna have to go back and get a 1 year one each time. Some doctors will measure your neck, and if it's over 16 inches, they may make you take a sleep study test to see if you have sleep apnea. That's a big thing now as well too. So sometimes they won't, if you don't know the doctor, they don't know your history. Some physicians make that mandatory, so that could be another thing to go into it. So try and pre-plan these things and get this stuff ahead of time, so you know what's going on. If you pass the exam, the medical examiner should complete the certificate and give it to you to show you that you passed. You must present a copy of the certificate to the DMV, where it will be kept on file until it expires. Prior to the expiration date of your certificate on file, you must provide an updated medical examiner certificate to the DMV. Medical examiner certificates will only be accepted at your local DMV when submitting an application for an original, amended, or renewal of a New York State CDL. Again, just New York State. And I'm sure it's the same in any other state. If you're not conducting one of those transactions, you must mail or send your certificate to the medical certification unit of the DMV. Again, so that email address down there, I've always kept that, as a record in my phone. I just take a picture of it. I type in DMV, and it autofills everything else on my iPhone. I just put down my name and driver's license and say new and current med certificate, and you'll get the automated reply. How long is the medical examiner certificate valid? The USDOT medical exam is normally valid for 24 months. However, Your medical examiner may give you a medical examiner certificate that expires in less than 24 months in order to monitor conditions such as high blood pressure, which the examiner wants to check more often than every 2 years. It just kind of recaps, what we said a moment ago. Who may perform the medical exam? As of May 21st, 2014, only doctors listed on the FMCSA National Registry or certified medical examiners may perform a USDOT medical exam. All USDOT medical examiner certificates issued on or after May 21st, 2014 must be issued by a certified medical examiner and must contain the medical examiner's national registry number. Kind of repeats what it said above, but it's good to know. How do I find a licensed medical examiner? To find a certified doctor in your area, you can visit the federal website. So that's always good to know. Again, chances are any of your urgent cares will have one. If you don't have a family doctor or personal doctor, or it's just a phone call, ask them if you got a way they can do a DOT physical. Generally, most family practices have at least one that do it. So again, with that being said, and doctors as far back on schedule as they are and busy, give yourself some time. Generally urgent care is going to be a walk-in. It may be a little more than what your doctor is, but I think on an average they're around $80 for a physical. There's also another way too. After you go to work for somebody, chances are they'll pay for your physical. But going into it, don't be surprised if you have a physical and you just paid for it. You go to work somewhere, so they want a new physical. It's pretty common. It's cheaper for them if you already have it. But don't be surprised if they make you redo it, because they'll have to do it at the same time. They have the DOT drug screen, which also is not the same, but in addition to pre-employment drug screen, that's all at one time. So they're looking at everything when they do that. So there's other things they look for in your physical when you do that. Looking for proteins and sugar and such like that. So they will take a urine sample. Okay. Important reminder: it's the responsibility of the CLP or CDL holders to submit updated copies of any required medical documentation to the DMV prior to the expiration date of the medical documentation on file. Failure to maintain a current medical documentation with DMV will result in the loss of your commercial driving privilege. It can be reinstated quickly, but nothing comes fast in any of the states, depending on what state you're in. There's a lot going on, especially now with COVID. Just don't gamble with it. It seems like you lose a month every time you do it, but I always get mine done a month ahead of time before it expires, just in case they're backed up and they don't get it on file. And again, they'll send you an automated email address, like in New York State they do. It says, don't expect this to be on here within 10 days, 10 business days. And you have that receipt copy. There's been times when people get that copy and 2 months later they get pulled over and their license has been downgraded. And the driver can hand them that, and then the officer is more likely to talk to you and release it and dig a little bit deeper, because you've got some information back from them. It's better than nothing. It may still get you a ticket or not, but at least you get some proof, and he's going to have a conversation with you that you probably should have called or anything like that. But I've never had mine downgraded, but I've always done it like a month ahead of time. Again, over 30 years, I've lost, and they haven't had that law in effect for 30 years, but since they have, since 14, I've lost probably 7 months, because I do it a month ago anyways. Medical examination exception. A medical exam or USDOT medical examiner certificate is not required if you self-certified to an accepted EA or an EI driving type. An accepted driving type, EA or EI, applies to the following types of commercial operations: to transport school children and or school staff between home and school as federal, state, or local government employees; to transport human corpses or sick or injured persons, fire truck or rescue vehicles during emergencies, and other related activities. Obviously that's pretty self-explanatory, but I guess a related activity would be, even a parade would be fine. But if if you go down to the local fire station and say, hey, my truck's broke down, can I use this to go back and forth to work and go get groceries? That's not gonna work. That's a little extreme, but just give you an idea. It's for emergency responses and other related activities, which I believe a parade would be okay with that as well too. Primarily in the transportation of propane, winter heating fuel when responding to an emergency condition requiring immediate response, such as damage to a propane gas system after a storm or flooding. This could be somebody that has their license and they work in the office, but they haven't done the physical, had a card done quite some time, and it's expired, but there's a emergency and they need to go out. They would be exempt from the physical in that case, just for an example. In response to a pipeline emergency condition requiring immediate response, such as a pipeline leak or a rupture, same scenarios as we just talked about. In custom harvesting on a farm or to transport farm machinery and supplies used in the custom harvesting operation to and from a farm or to transport custom harvested crops to a storage or market. Falls under that 150-mile radius, but I'm sure I would think it's within your state. So if you have a farm in, we're in New York and you have one in Pennsylvania as well too, it could be a little sketchy. It'd be something a farmer would want to look into, which I'm sure they probably have, but most of them are within their state. A beekeeper in the seasonal transportation of bees, so that's kind of an odd one as well too, but it happens. Without bees, we don't have a lot of things because we need them. Controlled and operated by a farmer, but it's not a combination vehicle. The power unit and towed unit, and is used to transport agricultural products, farm machinery or farm supplies. No placardable hazardous materials to and from a farm and within 150 air miles of the farm. As a private motor carrier of passengers for non-business purposes. Transport migrants, workers, must be at least 21 years or older. That could probably fall under a farm or going to a job site or something like that. Drivers who obtain their New York State CDL prior to 9/9/1999 are permitted to form non-accepted commercial operation except when transporting hazardous materials in New York State only. These drivers must self-certify to an EA. So for instance, for me, I've had mine since 1990, I guess, 89 or 90. I would fall under that category, but I'd have to stay within New York State and certify the EA. 138, application and written testing requirements. To get a Class A, B, or C CDL for the first time, to upgrade to a higher class CDL, which again we talked about, so if you had a Class B for a single unit and wanted to go a combination to an A, you fall under this as well too. Or to add a P, which the passenger, or ask for the school bus endorsements to a CDL. You must first obtain a commercial loader's permit for the proper class and type of vehicle you plan to drive. To obtain the learner's permit, you must already have a New York State driver's license that is not suspended, revoked, or canceled. You must apply in person at a New York State Motor Vehicles office. Again, I'm sure this is the same in any state. Appointments are not needed. However, you should contact the office if you have any special needs. They'll allow 3 hours to complete. It does take some time. They can put you in a room. So this book, I'm sure all this literature has been like this for years. This doesn't have anything in there about COVID. So this is all out the window. Depending on what's going on with COVID, I'm sure there's appointments that are necessary. Contact the office if you have any special needs. So allow 3 hours to complete of all the process, including test taking. This is just for the permit. This doesn't include any driving. Obviously, you have to go and have some time to get that done. Plan to arrive no later than 3 hours before the office scheduled closing time. And at the motor vehicle office, you will complete an application MV-44, in which you must provide proof of your legal presence in the U.S. See Form ID 44 CDL. Provide proof of your New York State residence. Same thing, see the same form. List all the states, including the District of Columbia, in which you were licensed to drive for the past 10 years. So you'll also see in here when you apply for a job, according to the 9/11 and all the background check information, they have to know where you've been if you've had a commercial motor vehicle license if you've had one for 10 years. A lot of you guys just are ladies starting out, getting it. This is not going to apply to you, but at the point when you get to 10 years, you have to show where you've been for 10 years with a commercial license because you could have done anything. You have to prove where you've been. It's just part of the transportation safety program after 9/11. You have to certify the type of commercial operation you perform or expect to perform. Present a copy of your medical exam or certificate if you meet the federal requirements. Show your New York State driver's license. Show your social security card. If it's a New York State DMV, has no record of your social security number, and you're asked to show your card. Pay the fees that cover the application, processing the photo document, and testing. You have to pass a general knowledge test and any necessary endorsements test by answering at least 80% of the questions correctly. See section 1.4. You are not allowed to bring anything into the testing room or area except for a pencil, and you must present your driver's license again before you can take the test. Remember, cell phones are not permitted in the test area at any time. Again, this is New York State. You have to understand what your local DMV would require, but chances are, with this being a commercial program, it's federal. Federally mandated restrictions on the CLPs. Commercial learner permits issued with a passenger P or school bus S endorsements will automatically get a new federally mandated no passengers in DMV bus P restriction. CLPs issued with the tank vehicles and endorsement will automatically get a federally mandated no cargo on CMV tank vehicle restriction. So this is so you can't have that while you have your permit, only when you get your license. And that's all for safety. So the P and X restrictions are issued only on the learner's permit. The CDL that's issued after all required tests have been passed will not have the restrictions. Locations, hours of your motor vehicle offices may be found in your local telephone directory. Again, you have to check with your local place. Driving your commercial learner's permit. Your commercial driver learning permit allows you to drive a vehicle of the class and type that matches the class and endorsements of your permit. That makes sense, as long as your permit is accompanied by an underlying New York State license. A driver holding a CDL the same or higher class of the proper endorsements accompanies you at all times. So if you've got a CDL A permit and you're in a tractor trailer combination vehicle, you can't have the other driver that has a CDL with you that has like a class B. That's what that means. I mean, it's pretty easy to figure that out, but they got to have at least the same endorsements that you're applying that vehicle and driving that vehicle for. Again, if you're pulling a tanker because you have a tanker endorsement that's empty, if that person that's with you does not have a tanker endorsement, they can't be riding with you because basically they don't understand or haven't taken the knowledge test to understand what's going on. Your permit and the supervising CDLs or supervising driver CDL do not have any restrictions that would prohibit driving in the practice vehicle, and you are not transporting any material that requires hazardous material, placards, or any quantity of material listed as a selected agent or toxin in 42 CFR 73, even when the supervising driver CDL has a hazmat endorsement, or you yourself hold a lower class of CDL with a hazmat endorsement. Skills testing requirements. To get your CDL, you must pass a skills test in a representative vehicle, one that matches the class, type, and use of the CDL you need. Study sections 11, 12, and 13 in this manual for details about the CDL skills test. And we'll talk about that later in the videos. And practice driving with a learner permit as much as possible until you are confident that you can pass the test. Let's just pause there for a second and go back to, this was all done before the new mandate came out. That February 7th of 2022, you have to go to a driving school. So this is all negligible, when you have to do that. So, if you go to a school for 6 weeks, you're going to come out with a license. They're going to get you as much driving time as possible. But the idea with this is that going into that with your permit already in hand, you're going to get jumped to the front of the class to go around your skills testing, or you should. They're still going to want you to go through, some of their knowledge tests as well too. But you can negotiate some of the pricing of the class by having this ahead of time, or just use it as an extra study guide that you're confident that the money you're going to spend on the class is going to be worthwhile and you'll pass, and not have to go take other pieces of it. If you fail, you may have to go take other sections of it. It's going to cost more money. It could possibly. Depends on what the school's policies are. Everybody's different, so I don't want to speak out of turn and tell you something that and put words in somebody else's mouth, because there's several different ways it could go. Okay. You may schedule your test either online or through DMV. I'm sure that's pretty much the same results. You must wait a minimum of 14 days from the date you obtained your permit before you can take the skills test. It normally takes several weeks from the date that you make your appointment to the day of the test. So schedule your test early. You may also cancel a scheduled skills test online or by telephone. You must cancel your appointment no less than 3 full business days prior to the scheduled road test date and time. If you cancel later than that, you will lose your skills test fee and must pay the skills test fee again before rescheduling. Additional information for scheduling a skills test can be found on the DMV website mentioned above. So again, it's kind of out the window after February 7th. A lot of stuff is going to change. So we're going to end this session. This has been a little over an hour, and then we'll jump into the next section here after this. It'll be part 2, and we'll continue going. So this is basically just an introduction of everything that you need to do. Then we're going to get an actual manual here in section 2. So stay tuned. This is going to be a fun ride. This is going to help a lot of people, and to be honest with you, if it helps one person, it's all worthwhile. So this is all about making people as safe as possible, and always operating a vehicle like your family's right next to you. If you keep that in mind, you're gonna be a safe driver and enjoy your career. This can be a rewarding career. It's all what you make of it. There's a lot of opportunities out there for different types of driving, and there's a lot of money to be made, and they'll take just about anybody right now. So stay tuned, and next day or two we'll get up part 2 of this. But this is it for part 1. CDL Trucking Guy signing out. Peace. Thanks.